Hi guys, I'm Joe Katz with the Katz Walk. Thanks so much for tuning in. I've got an amazing guest for you today, Jaime King. Jaime was a supermodel back in the 80s and 90s, and she modeled with some of the top fashion models in the world, from Naomi Campbell to Kate Moss. She is going to tell you all the stories, the behind the scenes stories, everything she went through. So we've got a lot of great things coming up, so stay tuned for the show. Jaime King, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you look so fresh and pretty and clean. And I love your necklace. That's so cool. That chunky trend is going on. Oh, yeah, it's Dior. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
People are doing a lot of layering and all of that stuff.
Yes, I love all the layers.
Yeah.
Chunky.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming. We have so much to talk about, so many things to talk about. I want to learn everything about you. People probably know you as, you started your career modeling, then you have done some amazing stuff in acting with your new show. That's actually now you're on your second season. I think you said you just finished your third season of Black Summer, which is awesome.
Yes, just finished second season.
Oh, second season. Yes. Wow, that's awesome. But I just want to get into, I love to have like true conversations, and you're so honest about so much stuff. I love that.
Yes.
And I want the audience to just really hear, like, who is Jaime King? And we've heard so much about you. But I think your story is so fascinating about like how you grew up, because I grew up in the Midwest and you grew up in Nebraska, right?
Yes, in Omaha, Nebraska.
So how did it all start, Jaime? Like, how did it all start when you started to get in? Did like modeling choose you, or did you think, "Oh, I want to be a model," or how did it all start?
I just remember always loving fashion. I always loved fashion, clothing, photography, films, music. I think it was, my love for the arts. Ever since I was very little, I remember, seeing, like particular covers of magazines that were really striking to me. And it wasn't about the magazine per se, but it was about the feeling that it gave me. There was one that just popped into my mind. It was, I think, do you know the model Nadia? And it was Demarche.
Oh,
and it was a close-up of her face and those blue eyes. And there was something that was blue on the cover with the red lips, and it was shot very kind of 70s with like a ring flash kind of a vibe, this striking experience. And then there was a cover of Harper's Bazaar, I believe, with, I think it was Naomi and Kate, and it was the Marc Jacobs collection from, when grunge was, popping off. It was like the year of Nirvana and all that stuff. And the thin eyebrows and like all of that, and, then I just thought of the Grease album cover, of Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta, and like her and her, smoking hot black, look. And there's something about music, film, fashion that always made me feel like somehow I was seen or heard as a kid growing up in the Midwest who was very different than other kids, and the idea that style is a way to communicate. It's a language, and allowed me to express who I was as a human being, when I was young and I didn't necessarily know. It's like you got to try on all these different parts and all of these different experiences just through clothing.
Right. And so how did it happen? So when you were like 14, did you go into a modeling contest, or did you go to an agency, or?
I actually, I saw an advertisement in the local newspaper in the Omaha World Herald for Nancy Bound's modeling school. And I begged my parents to save the money so I could go, because I was like, and it said that in this, ad that you would meet people from a big city, agents from big cities. And as a kid that had never gone to a city, right?
Right.
Well, I went to one time, one time I went to Chicago. And I was like, that's it. That's how I get out of here. I never felt like I fit growing up in Omaha. I just felt like I was, bullied. I looked a certain way. I didn't feel like I fit because my sense of style or what my interests were very different than the kids around me. I wanted to just voraciously read books and, watch films and study art. And it wasn't like the cool thing. And I felt in a way, in my soul, I knew that, what it is that I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist and I wanted to be a filmmaker and I wanted to learn everything that I could about the world. And that to me was like, I'll never forget that moment. I was like, this is how I do it. And I was actually 13 at the time.
Wow.
13. And then I met an agent from New York who is a very big agent. And that's how it started.
Wow. And what were you in school? What were you bullied about? Because I talk about bullying too, because I went through that growing up in Iowa. Like I was like the weird gay kid that loved plaid pants and penny loafers.
Exactly.
And everybody was like, penny loafers, you're weird. Oh my
God.
Yeah.
Right?
Or boat shoes. Oh, it was like, if you have boat shoes,
so
like,
good.
no,
right?
Yeah, that was awful. Yeah.
What
were you bullied about?
It's seemingly everything. And I didn't quite understand why. It felt like, the way that I would put clothes together, they'd say, "Oh, did your dad dress you in the dark?" Or da, 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 da. Like my mom was a seamstress; she could make anything, and so we would go to the fabric store, and I would pick out these really wild, animal prints with neon colors, and have her make my leggings, and I just had went to the Goodwill, and I always had this very eclectic sort of sense of style that didn't fit what it was supposed to be in school. Right. So, and also the things that everybody wanted to wear, we couldn't necessarily afford, so it wasn't like I could be, it was like Esprit and Limited Express.
Oh,
and
right.
Benetton. And Benetton.
Yes. Benetton.
And,
right.
All of that kind of stuff. And so I was making up my own, not even making it up. It's just I dressed the way that I loved. And I remember consistently, being terrified, literally terrified to go to school, because the girls didn't like me, the boys didn't like me. It was pretty horrific. It made me feel actually physically unsafe, because when you're a kid and you're being bullied, you just never know, because your fight or flight's always activated. Right. And so, and I thought it was me. I'm like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me that I can't somehow fit into any group, and, I remember, this is a very candid story, but I remember, I got my first pair of Limited Express pants and I was like, this is it. Today is going to be the day where I'm going to go to school and they're going to love me.
They'll love you.
Yeah. That's it, and they were white with black polka dots. And I was on the bus and, I remember being so excited to be on the bus in the morning and go to school. And at lunchtime, I walked in the cafeteria and there was, the cool kids, the popular group, started waving me over. And I remember it was literally like a movie when you're just like, are they, that moment, right? We're like, is it me? Or who are they waving at? And I'm like,
right.
Oh, the pants.
They liked it.
I was like, oh, it must be the pants. So they're waving me over.
Yeah.
And I come over and the boys had napkins, and they put ketchup all over the napkins, right? and they started throwing them at me, and I run into the bathroom and I'm bawling, right? And I look down and I got my period for the first time. So I had bled through these pants. The first time I had my period, no one told me, obviously. And that was my experience of school, of coming into being a woman. It was so traumatic, and this stuff is happening every day and nobody will just give details about it, and worse than that, obviously. When people give you a puzzle, it's in a box and there's a picture on it, right? And it's somehow we're supposed to fit ourselves into these correct pieces,
right?
So that we're a part of a collective, right? a collective picture of the way that we're supposed to look, feel, see, be a part of. And, now I realize, at 41 that we don't belong in a box of someone else's picture. It's all really an illusion, right? We all have our own identities, and we come into that through our wisdom and as we grow older. And I'm thankful though for those experiences, because it gave me so much empathy and so much compassion, and really understanding. I think I felt like the underdog and the outcast, and so I related to people that grew up feeling differently or thinking differently. And that's a really profound thing, because those tend to be the artists of this world, the ones that just didn't know where they fit, because they could see things in a different way.
Right. They didn't fit in like the typical group or stuff like that. What was your saving grace like daily? Like if it felt so hard? Because I totally understand. Like that's what I kept thinking, like, when is this going to be over? When is this going to be over? I want to get out of school. I want to become like a working adult, or I just wanted to be out. And I was like, how do I get out of Iowa? And so
that's all I thought too. That's why I was like, this is it.
Yeah. Oh, the modeling.
What was the saving grace? Yeah.
Yeah.
My saving grace, honestly, I think it was my imagination. It was my imagination.
And what did you imagine?
Oh, I would make up anything. Like I would play by myself all the time. Like, I would just go to parks and make up these worlds and characters and, like gather my cousins around and, make plays. And I read a lot, listened to a lot of music, played piano a lot. I took a lot of pictures. I really loved photography. So I would collect cameras and take pictures and, go to the dark room, things like that. It was really what it is that I still do now, that was my saving grace.
Wow. That's interesting. So it's like, but you went to 13, and then at 14, what happened then?
At 14, I went to New York.
So you left you were in what, high school or no? Junior high?
Yes, in high school.
High school.
And I went to New York over the summer and with my mother. And it was one of those things where it was like immediate. One of my first shoots was for the first issue of Visionaire with Stephen Klein and James Carliardos. And
this was your first summer there.
Yes. And so immediately I was shooting for, speaking of Harper's and Vogue, and it was something that happened very quickly, and I didn't understand it because I was a kid, right? And I just thought, it was definitely a phenomenon, but I didn't know, And when I went to go back to school, my agent told my mother, your daughter is a star, and coming from where we come from, we can't like wrap our heads around that, like my mother or me or anything like that. And he's like, she can do correspondence courses for school and move to New York, and she'll be chaperoned and taken care of, and which is not true,
Oh, it wasn't true that you were being chaperoned and taken care of. No,
no. That's why the guild rules are so important that they have, like in Hollywood and for acting. It's if you're a minor, you have to have your parents. You have to be there's school on the set. They're very strict rules, and in the fashion industry, they didn't exist at that time. So it was one of those things where I, was a kid, and everything happened very quickly, and I didn't want to I didn't know how to like share that with my parents, and I thought if I did, then I would never be able to stay. So it was again another really interesting thing, and you grow up very quickly, and those experiences really contributed to what it is that I do as a storyteller.
So Jaime, like, I know this is like a lot of stuff, but I think people would find it so interesting. So like when you were 14, so then you ended up staying in New York, your mom went back to Nebraska, or did she stay with you?
No, she went back to Nebraska because I have siblings, and I was staying with one of the editors of Harper's Bazaar at that time. And, then I stayed in a model's apartment for like a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I had my own place by the time I was 15.
You were living on your own?
Yeah.
Holy moly. Oh my
Yeah.
God. So then were you doing school while you were in New York?
I was doing correspondence courses and, and then, as soon as I went to New York, also then you have the fashion shows, right? So
Right.
then I was traveling all over the world and, it was at the order at that time, it was London shows, then Milan, then Paris, then New York. And so, and that happened very quickly too. I remember one of my first shows was Tom Ford for Gucci. And like there was this moment where I look up and I realize Naomi Campbell is right in front of me, and I turn around and Kate Moss is right behind me. I'm just
Oh my God.
oh my God. like it was like those kind of moments where it's like, how is this really happening? How is this happening? How is this happening? And, with these extraordinary designers, working for different maisons, like having their own, like Karl Lagerfeld, he was one of the first designers that I worked with. And so it was like Karl for Chanel, Karl for Fendi, Karl for then Chloe.
Those. Yeah.
Karl Lagerfeld for Karl Lagerfeld. Then we had John Galliano. Then John Galliano got Dior. So then we did John Galliano Dior. And Lee McQueen. I met Alexander McQueen when I was 14. We met on his very first collection, and I did every show of his until I stopped. He was a very, very dear friend of mine. And, to have these, experiences where, Lee was like using fabric from his apartment because he like couldn't afford like certain things, and or from his drapes from his apartment, and, like just these wild experiences where you see people start from the very beginning and, really, achieve their dreams, and that forms a real bond.
Oh, so you would hang out with him and...
Oh, yes. Yeah. He was a very dear friend of mine.
Wow. And you walked for Karl Lagerfeld in his shows?
Karl, Tom, Westwood, basically all of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the most interesting thing? Like, we hear about things behind the scenes in the shows, and it's like, is it chaotic? What's an interesting thing that happens behind the scenes, like that we don't know, that nobody would really know?
I mean, then I don't know how it is now, but I remember 1 week in Paris, I had 26 shows. So 26 shows.
Oh my God.
So it's like you're running from like Dries Van Noten to Demula Meister to then Jean Colonna to then, Karl would, Lagerfeld would always start at like 5 a.m. There was never any food. It was just like champagne, orange juice, and croissants, so it was like that was, so you start with one show and then you're racing to the next one. They're like ripping your hair out, like, scrubbing your face down, taking off whatever nails, and at that time it was so, and especially like in Paris, you had, Paris was my favorite because it was to me the most wildly creative. You had the Odils and the Julian D's and the Sam McKnights and these extraordinary artists that are doing some of the most phenomenal things that you've ever seen, with hair and makeup and individual looks. Like, the Galliano shows were a theater, and Lee shows were theater, and that's when I knew in those shows that my love of acting and having never acted before was something that I needed to do because of the experience that I felt when you had that kind of freedom. And so behind the scenes, I think it's like literally like all of the race, and nobody knows that you literally just got, to that venue roughly 5 minutes before you're walking down a runway, and you have like 10 people, doing everything at the same time, when you're in demand like that. Right. So it's a very, I can't imagine it's like that now. But at that time, it was a time where supermodels really had so much power, and it was, a core of us that, would do all the shows together. And so you were
one of the big supermodels of that time. Yes. I mean, with Naomi and all of them, Kate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Shalom and, Amber Valletta, Carolyn Murphy. I mean, just, these amazing, amazing women.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
And so they're changing you every time, just so people understand, like during those shows, like in Paris and London and all of that, they're changing you between takes, right? You just stand there, or do you jump into new outfits, or how does it work? Like within minutes, right?
Well, I mean, you go from one show to another show. So you're doing that within minutes. So it's like, imagine it's like a quick change of the most extravagant, like hair, makeup, everything, right? And then they dress you as quick as they can. You're out there, you're walking, you come back, you race back. They take all the clothes off you. You put all the stuff back on you. It's like it's
wow.
It's crazy.
Craziness. Yeah. Wow. You were 15 at that, or 15 or 16 at that time?
I started doing that at like 14. Wow. 14. Yeah.
Were you by yourself then, or was your mom, she had to be with your brothers and sister, right? Or
she was with my brothers and sisters. But again, you have to understand, like, that's the thing that the industry did then. It was, they told your family that, you were being chaperoned by your agent, by these adults. And really, like, the adults were wild and crazy and creative and didn't understand that it's completely unethical to do something like that. Otherwise my mother would not have.
Right.
Let me do that.
Were you scared?
And also, like, really, I think that children are incredibly resilient. And I think that I was so scared of just having to stay in Omaha that kind of fear was matched with whatever fear that I had about being away and being young and without my parents. And, when you're like a teenager, you're like, you want to be a part of the group, Right. So I just, I was like, I just want to be a part of like the crew, and so, but everyone was so much older than me, I just did whatever I could to assimilate, to be with these women, and was seen as a woman, even though I was a child. And, that part was really difficult because I forgot, because I wasn't taught that it was okay to just be a kid. Right. There was so much responsibility. And then all of a sudden you go from, having, really no money to making so much money, at that time. And it was just, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. Who could take that in? Yeah.
But it was perfect, weirdly perfect,
Wow.
In a strange way, even with whatever challenges and a lot of the things that happened. Again, I always look to see, how did I learn from that? How did I grow from that? How did that contribute to my life? And I look at the experiences and the people that I've worked with and met and have been in my life. And it's just very, it's overwhelmingly powerful to be blessed to be with these human beings that think and create in a way that's just completely out of this world,
right,
and that was really my foundation, my education as an artist.
Yeah.
And brought that into everything else that I did.
It reminds me, like, if I could have done that to get out of Iowa, I'd be like, yes, sign me up. But I would have been scared. I would have been scared.
I was terrified. But I didn't know what that terror was.
Right, but I wanted to get out.
It. Yeah.
But that seems so much better than being in school and people being mean. And it's like,
that's the thing. That was what I was like, okay, either go back to that and then what?
Right,
I couldn't.
Right. When you were younger, did you feel beautiful?
Not particularly. No.
You didn't?
No. I thought my sister was beautiful.
Really?
I always recognized like the beauty in other people. I mean, there were times where I thought that I was pretty, or times where I thought that I was beautiful. But again, when I was younger, I didn't necessarily identify with that because it felt like I wasn't, there was some kind of like paradox that was happening, like between like the not fitting in and the bullying, and then being expected to be one way, like a cheerleader or a prom queen because of the way that I look. So my exterior didn't somehow match up to my interior. Right. And And that's why I wasn't ever really accepted, because it was like, oh, you're pretty or beautiful or whatever. And so therefore you should match these expectations. But I wasn't those things. I didn't want to do any of those things. I really I just wanted to, again, read, write, make movies, make plays,
Wow.
make clothing, like just very, my interests were completely different. And I just didn't know how to reconcile that. It's like a Rubik's Cube. I remember always feeling like if I just twist and turn it enough, like somehow it all makes sense. And it never did, not when I was younger. Now it does. But, when you're a kid and you're going through it, as you know, you don't know. I mean, what was your saving grace?
I think my saving grace was my family. My sister was my best friend. My sister was my best friend. And she would go after the kids and be like, don't you talk to him. And she was the cool, badass girl that was like, kind of like, she was a little bit chunky, like she gained a little bit of weight, but everybody's like, you're so cool, because she'd wear red lipstick and oversized jeans and like a ripped shirt, and everybody was like, you're weird, but you're kind of cool. And so she was
owned
like,
it, right? It's her essence, right? Because she had that,
and everybody loved her because they thought she was kind of oddly cool, and and she was like, I'm not popular, but she wasn't the cheerleader or anything like that. So she was kind of like my saving grace to like just talk to in the way that I knew how to talk at that age, and but
that's so great.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's like I really, I mean, for you, like, I can imagine like going into modeling. I mean, didn't people tell you all the time, oh my God, you're so beautiful, Jaime. Oh, you're so beautiful. Yes. If they see you, they're like, you're gorgeous,
Yes. So it was very, I think, in a way, alluring, because you need that. Like, it was like, I needed to feel confident. Right. And people in the fashion industry gave me that confidence, because it was oh, you're so beautiful, you're so gorgeous, oh, you're, like the way that you move. I felt like some part of me that wasn't filled, growing up, was filled through these people that saw me, and not just on a physical level. Like, they saw something in me that was like, oh, she gets this thing, or, like, she gets me. Like, it was, but it's also strange to go from, not fitting into anything to all of a sudden being wanted, or to be a part of something, because the foundation was built as that I don't belong fitting into something. Right. Wow. So as a teenager, I remember still, being really feeling a lot like, when I'd be like in a room or at a fancy dinner or backstage. And like, even though I was a part of it, I still felt like I was sort of inside of myself, like, not
with that group. You mean with the
not with it? Even though I was with the group, I still always felt a little bit outside of it. Like I was observing it, and so that part to me is interesting to look at with anyone that grows up with radical shifts in their lives. What the foundation is versus the next experience and the next experience.
Yeah. Do you feel beautiful now?
I do.
You do?
I do.
That's cool.
I do. Yeah.
Like, you look at yourself and you're like, yeah, I'm beautiful. I'm a model. I model. I'm a beautiful person. I'm beautiful on the outside. I'm beautiful on the inside.
I don't look in the mirror and think I'm beautiful. I'm a model. When I see the beauty, or my beauty that I recognize is how I experience myself internally, right? So who I am as a human being then radiates from me. And yes, on the physical, I believe that I'm very beautiful. On the inner, connecting to my inner is what really, it's all of that together that makes our beauty, right?
Yeah.
And wisdom and age and experience and self-acceptance and, the friendships and the relationships in our lives. That's, it's our relationship with ourselves that allows us, I think, to experience truly what beautiful is.
Right. Because I can imagine being at that age and feeling, not sure how to take that in at such a young age,
Yes.
That's intense. Are you close with your family now? Are you still close
I'm
with?
very close, very
Oh,
close.
that's
Yes.
cool. That's
Yeah.
great. And what do
They're
they
the
think of all
best.
your success?
I mean, it's sort of unfathomable. Again, it's like when you, we're from the Midwest. It's like, we're just
We're just
like, you're just,
people.
we're just
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
And so like to shoot to superstardom was, I couldn't even understand it. They couldn't understand. We're just like, oh, okay, we're just going to do this thing. And,
Wow.
it's not, when it happens that quickly, it's hard to really process it.
Right, right. Wow, that's so interesting. And so you hear, there's so many things about models like growing up in it too. I mean, what's like, is it true about like what you have to eat or what you have to watch, what you eat, what we hear about all these things that models don't eat anything and they don't, they're kind of unhealthy and, they're smoking and they're doing drugs and all that stuff.
There was a lot of that. Because again, I was so young and I was naturally thin. I really ate whatever I wanted, and not to sound like, and I was still
Yeah.
thin, but I was a kid.
Yeah.
So uh, I was able to, eat McDonald's, and I didn't worry about my weight. There was a lot of, smoking cigarettes. There was a lot of being introduced to drugs and things that, from that time in fashion was very, wild. I didn't know what I should or shouldn't be doing. I just felt like if I didn't do what they were doing, somehow I'd get kicked out. Right. So it's the same
Oh,
thing. It's like if you were in junior high or high school and people are like, oh, this is the thing to try or to do. Um, I guess, I just desperately wanted to be, and again, it's like adults. So I didn't quite understand, I thought that maybe I'd be protected by them. So I just went with what they were doing because I didn't have, that sort of guidance. In retrospect, I look back and there was a lot of things that people did to look a particular way. But it wasn't until I was about 17 where my body started to change and I had to exercise, I would exercise and eat really healthy. And I didn't starve myself. I just changed, what I put into my body and I changed,
mm-hmm.
My physical activity. And I'm actually really thankful for that because, I love running and I love using my body as a vehicle, which it is specifically as an actor as well. But I think there's a lot of different ideas or stereotypes or stories about being a model or being in the fashion industry. And I think it really depends on what year and what decade and what generation,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I think it's the awareness at the time.
Because you always hear like like models don't eat and you've got to keep, I mean, I've met people over the years that like girls are like, there was another girl I actually interviewed on the show who was who's become very famous in Instagram and all of that stuff. And she was like, her agency dropped her because she gained, 10 pounds. And, it's like, and she, so she didn't know what to
Yes.
do and it all changes everything. And they gave her a warning, like 2 months warning. And then eventually they dropped her because she put on 10 pounds. And she goes, I guess, they had the right because they gave me the warning, but it's just, yeah. It's
No, that makes me
sad.
really, yeah. It's, I saw things like that, and it makes me sad that anyone would still have that kind of mentality now. You know, one would hope that we're not. It's just like it's sickening to me. And I mean, I remember things like I remember one very famous model who had, I loved her ears, but they stuck out a little bit, and that's what I loved about it because they were quirky and they were different, and they made her like pin her ears back or you know um and that's very, and in Hollywood they do that. I've seen many actresses that would have to starve themselves and do crazy things because the studios needed or wanted that, right? And I do remember one time where I did have that shift, and I remember my agent saying to me that I was starting to look thick.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait, what? And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to like, and I was like, really? And it does create like a body dysmorphia, just like
Right.
the kids now with Instagram and filters and face tuning and what that's doing to um, the brain development of children, is crazy, because they start to see themselves through filters and, oh, I have to look like that. And then they're putting fillers and this and that, and they're actually like changing their faces whilst developing at the same time. So they'll never know what it's like to grow into their beauty. And so it's a tricky thing, it's really tricky. And I feel like the kids now are dealing with a much more difficult situation than when I was a child. And I thought that was hard.
Yeah. You were always known. I remember seeing you. You were always known to be, I think it's innately you're thin. That's just who you are.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you're just thin. I mean, some girls are built, everybody's built differently, but you're normally just more thin. And I remember you being like, they always said like she was that heroin chic thinness, like super wafy. Didn't they say, or no?
Well, it was like and the term like heroin chic is so disturbing to
It's
me.
weird,
But that was
isn't
like,
it?
it's like they took the grunge movement, right, and that
Right.
time in the 90s, and what fashion designers were creating and making, and the swag or the energy of it, and Kate Moss actually really paved the way for me to even be able to be a supermodel at all, because you had to be 5'10".
Oh, right. What are you?
Like minimum
5?
of 5'10". I'm 5'8.5".
Oh, so yeah.
So I was like, oh, I'm never going to be a Cindy Crawford or a Claudia
Right.
Schiffer. I never thought, or an Evangelista or Naomi. It's like, I just thought it was, and if I could only grow taller, because I knew that you had to be a certain height to be a supermodel, right?
Right,
and
right.
When Kate Moss and Jamie Richard and these women came in and were thinner and wafier, then it actually gave me the opportunity to do that, because Kate's what, 5'7", I think, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy that it's like we have to think about something in inches and heights, and
I know.
again it goes back to
yeah,
standard, right?
Right. It's crazy to think all that stuff. So if you were to look back at your young self, what would you tell her now? That girl in New York at 14.
I would say that you did good, kid. You did good. I really, as a kid, did the best that I could with what I knew, with what I had. To be gentle with ourselves and who we were as kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And extend that gentleness to ourselves, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Wow. Any advice you would give her?
It's so interesting when you say any advice you would give her. I always think about, what would I give to other people, like other, people that are
like even
young.
Other people, that are young. I mean, I sometimes look at myself, like if I think about giving myself advice, it's at that super young age, like I feel like you do the best you can, but it's like, I don't know. I always find it interesting.
What would you tell yourself at that age?
That it's okay to be different. It's okay. It's so weird, Jamie, because now I also feel like, back then everybody goes, you're so weird. You're so different. You're wearing boat shoes and plaid pants and, all this stuff. And you don't wear t-shirts and jeans and you look like a girl and you're all this stuff. And then when you get older and you start doing stuff, people are like, oh my God, we celebrate. You're amazing. It's like,
yes.
Well, that switch just it's not so easy to just go from, what I mean?
That's exactly what we're talking about. I know exactly what you mean, because the exactly what you just said is like, wow, the thing that I was bullied for, the thing that made me such an outcast, so different, so weird, became the thing that I was celebrated for. It became the thing, I became a fashion icon. I became, it was like the things that people seemingly hated about me, that kept me away from people, becomes what people adore. And again, that switch is really hard.
Right, right. It's really difficult to be able to go, wait, I can't switch it that quick, to be able to, I mean,
Yes.
you do, and it's fun to be, but some of that thinking you have to change in your mind and your brain.
100%. It's the inner dialogue, right?
Right,
It we can't shift that quickly.
right,
It's the because it's our messaging,
right,
right?
right, right,
It's
right.
how what and it's the messaging that we've gotten from the world, and when that all of a sudden shifts, then we have to change it inside of ourselves and in relationship to the world. It takes a lot of work to do that.
Right, right. To change that a lot. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, are you comfortable with just saying, because I read about just some of the things like you went through at 16, like with some of the stuff was it difficult, like getting involved with some of those people and then some of the stuff like the drug stuff and all of that, and to get away from it, and how do you get away from it, and how do you still stay? I don't know. Like for me, I always remember being so scared. I was so scared of everything.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to lose control if I try anything, if I try pot or, I was like a
Yeah.
baby about all that stuff. I can't imagine
Yeah.
but, also it can help. It helps you lose maybe some of your inhibitions and, stuff like that.
Yeah, I was scared. I didn't even know what I was doing half the time, but it was like I'd be on a shoot and they would say, "Oh, do you want to try dope?" I thought dope was pot and
Yeah.
dope was heroin or something. Like it was like and it's like
And so
and
you
when
just say
literally it's like,
yes.
it's like when you're the only person and you're a kid and the photographer, the editor, when everyone's like, and you're just like I didn't know what I was supposed to do or not do.
Oh,
So
right.
do you understand? I
Yeah.
didn't know. And it's
Right.
not like you had someone like taking you out of the room. So it was a series of many, things like that happened. And of course I was scared. I didn't know. And by the time I was 17, I have never taken anything since. So, it was one of those when I knew that life was not like that was not who I was. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to live my life like that. And I had learned everything I could learn from the fashion industry. I'd worked with like with all of the greats. And frankly, what got me out of it was my own inner compass of wanting to learn and grow and expand. And I was like, okay, I've learned everything that I can from this industry. It just wasn't enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't
Mm-hmm.
it satiate my heart and my soul to continue in fashion. And people they're like, wait, you're going to go do what? You're going to be an actor now? You're going to go. Because at that time, there were no multi hyphenates. You didn't just go from
Right.
being a supermodel and then be a serious actor. It just didn't work like that.
Right.
So they're
Right.
like, wait,
Right.
what are you doing? Like, you're making us all this money and you're making all this money. And why would you stop now? Like, you have your whole career ahead of you. And inside of me, it was like, no. I'm just like, I've learned everything. And I'm so grateful for that. And this is not what I want to be a part of. And I just had bigger dreams, other dreams and things that I needed to do. And I'm just really thankful that there is that thing inside of me it's our soul that's bigger than, that guides us, our higher self
Mm-hmm.
that guides us. And, it just, yeah, I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And I wanted to, I just really wanted to be a filmmaker.
Mm. And so what age did you switch over to acting?
Uh, Around 17.
Oh, that young.
Yeah, 18. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, I did my first film when I was 18.
So then you gave up the modeling. You didn't
Yes.
do.
And I was very, very strict about that. I somehow knew inside of myself, and I said, I will not do anything in the fashion industry anymore. From once I get, into the film industry, because I just didn't, there was no guide at that time in terms of how do you switch from one thing to another. But
Uh-huh.
I knew that I had to really commit to being an actor and the greatest actor and training and all of the studying, all the hard work that you need to do that, so that I could be seen as serious and and in terms of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't do any magazines, any campaigns, nothing unless it was specifically to promote a film.
Oh, so after 18, no more Vogue, no more Harper's, nothing.
Only for press for a film. That was it.
Oh, so if something came like Clairol or L'Oreal and they wanted you as the main girl, you wouldn't do it?
I wouldn't do it. The first thing that I did was Revlon with Peter Lindbergh, and I did it because it was an all-actor campaign. So it was myself, Julianne Moore, Halle Berry, Eva Mendes. That was the first time that I agreed to do a campaign for a company, a brand.
Wow. Jamie, I could talk to you all day, but I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about your film career and everything, but we're going to wrap up today. We're going to come back another time and we're going to talk all about your film career and your TV career, because it's amazing how you transitioned and where you went. So I want to encourage everybody to tune back in, because we're going to talk all about Jamie's TV and film and fabulous career after she quit modeling and went into full-time acting. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
All right.
This is so fun. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Thanks for listening to The Katz Walk. Make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to executive producer Gerardo Orlando, producer Leah Longbreak, and audio engineer Dave Douglas.